Relational model build data logically rather than physically. Table is a structured data independence and resembles a file conceptually. Relational database model is easier to understand than hierarchical and network models. Logical build of relational database is based on relation. Relation thought of as a table. Table is a two-dimensional structure composed of rows and columns. Persistent representation of logical relation contain group of related entities. A table is perceived as a two-dimensional structure composed of rows and columns. Each table row tuple represents a single entity occurrence within the entity set. Each table column represents an attribute and each column has a distinct name. Each table row represents a single entity occurrence within the entity set. Each intersection of a row and column represents a single data value. All values in a column must conform to the same data format. All values in a column must conform to the same data format. Each column has a specific range of values known as the attribute domain. All values in a column must conform to the same. All values in a column must conform to the same data format. Each column has a specific range of values known as the attribute domain. The order of the rows and columns is immaterial to the DBMS. Each table must have an attribute or combinations of attributes that uniquely identifies each row. Each column has a specific range of values known as the attribute domain. All values in a column must conform to the same data format. Each intersection of a row and column represents a single data value. Each row in the table must be uniquely identifiable. Key is one or more attributes that determine other attributes. Key row is based on determination. If you know the value of attribute A, you can determine the value of attribute B. Functional dependence. Attribute B is functionally dependent on A if all rows in table that agree in value for A also agree for B. Attribute B is functionally dependent on A if all rows in table that agree in value for A also agree in value for B. Primary key is an attribute that uniquely, a combination of attributes that uniquely identifies any given row. Composite key composed of more than one attribute. Key attribute is any attribute that is part of a key. Super key is any key that uniquely identifies each row. Candidate key is a super key without a necessary attribute. Entity integrity. Each row entity instance in the table has its own unique identity. To maintain entity integrity or not, there is no data entry at all. It's not permitted in the primary key. There is no data entry not permitted in primary key should be avoided in other attribute. Can represent an unknown attribute value or known but missing attribute value or not applicable condition. Can represent an unknown attribute value, unknown but missing attribute value or not applicable condition. An unknown attribute value or known but missing attribute value or not applicable condition. Unknown attribute value or known but missing attribute value or not applicable condition. Can create problems when functions like count, average, and sum are used. Can create logical problems when relational tables are linked. Create logical problems when relational tables are linked. Control redundancy makes the relational database works. Table within the database share a common attribute. Enables tables to be linked together. Multiple occurrence of values not redundant when required to make the relationship, but redundancy exists only when there is unnecessary duplication of attribute values. Foreign keys and attribute whose values match primary key values in the related table. Referential integrity is foreign key contains a value that refers to an existing valid tuple row in another relation. Secondary key is key used strictly for data retrieval purposes. Superkeys and attribute combination of attribute that uniquely identify each row in table. Candidate key minimal superkey that does not contain a subset of attribute that is itself a superkey. Primary key uniquely identify all other attribute values in any given row cannot contain none, thus cannot entry. Foreign keys and attribute are combination of attributes in one table whose values must either match the primary key in another table or be null. Foreign keys and attributes are combination of attributes in one table whose values must either match the primary key in another table or be null. Secondary keys and attributes are combination of attributes used strictly for data retrieval purposes. Many RDBMs enforce integrity rules, safer to ensure that application design conforms to entity and referential integrity rules. Designers use flags to avoid nulls. Flags indicate absence of some value. Entity integrity requirement or primary keys entries are unique and no part of a primary key may be null. Purpose each row will have a unique identity and foreign key values can properly reference primary key value. No inverse can have a double key number, nor can it be null. All inverse are uniquely identified by inverse number. Referential integrity requirement is a foreign key may have either a null entry as long as it's not part of its table, primary key, or an entry that matches. Referential integrity, a foreign key may have either a null entry as long as it's not part of its table, primary key, or an entry that matches the primary key value in the table to which it's related. Having no null foreign key value must reference an existing primary key value. Purpose is possible for an attribute not to have a corresponding value, but it will be impossible to have an invalid entry. The enforcement of the referential it's possible for an attribute not to have a corresponding value, but it will be impossible to have an invalid entry. The enforcement of the referential integrity rule makes it impossible to delete a row in one table whose primary key has mandatory matching foreign key values in another table. Relational algebra defines theoretical way of manipulating table contents using relational operator. Use of relational algebra operators produce on existing relation produce new relations. Select known as restrict years values for all rows found in a table that satisfy a given condition can be used to list all of the row values or only those row values that match specified criteria. It uses a horizontal subset of table. Project uses all values for selector attributes. It uses a vertical subset of table. Intersect uses only the arrows that the rows that appear in both tables. As was true in the case of union, the table must be union compatible to yield valid result. You cannot use intersect if one of the attributes numeric and another is character based. Union combines all rows from two tables excluding duplicate rows. The tables must have the same attribute characteristic. The columns and domain must be compatible to be used in the union. Difference uses all rows in one table that are not found in the other table. That is, it subtracts one table from the other. Difference uses all rows in one table that are not found in other table. That is, it subtracts one table from the other. So true in the case of union, the table must be union compatible to yield valid result. However, note that subtracting the first table from the second table is not the same as subtracting the second table from the first table. Product uses all possible paths of rows from two tables, also known as the Cartesian product. Therefore, if one table has 6 rows and the other table has 3 rows, the product uses at least composed of 6 and 3 is 18 rows. Natural join links table by selecting rows with common values in common attribute join column. Equal join links table on the basis of an equality condition that compass specified columns. Teeter join is any other comparison operator is used. Inner join only returns match records from the tables that are being joined. Outer join match paths are retained, and any unmatched values in either table are left null. Left outer join uses all of the rows in the customer table, including those that do not have matching value in the agent table. Right outer join uses all of the rows in the agent table, including those that do not have matching values in the customer table. Data dictionary provides detailed counting of all tables found within the user-designer created database. Contains at least all the attribute names and characteristics for each table in the system. Contains metadata, data about data. Contains at least all the attribute names and characteristics for each table in the system. System catalog contains metadata, detailed system data dictionary that describe all objects within the database. System catalog contains metadata and detailed system data dictionary that describe all objects within their database. Homonym indicates the use of the same name to label different attributes. Synonym is opposite to homonym, indicates the use of different names to describe the same attribute. Opposite of a homonym indicates the use of different names to describe the same attribute. One-to-many relational modeling idea should be the norm in any relational database design. One-to-one relationship should be rare in any relational database design. Many-to-many relationship cannot be implemented as such in the relational model. Many-to-many relationship can be changed into one-to-many relationship. Relational database norm found in any database environment is one-to-many relationship. One entity related to only one other entity and vice versa sometimes means that the entity components were not defined properly. Could indicate that two entities actually belong in their same tables. Sometimes it means that entity components were not defined properly. Could indicate that two entities actually belong in the same table. Certain conditions absolutely require the use. Certain conditions absolutely require the use. Certain conditions the many-to-many relationship implemented by breaking up to produce a set of one-to-many relationship. Avoid problems inherent to many-to-many relationship by creating a composite entity includes as foreign key the primary keys of tables to be linked. Data redundancy leads to data anomalies can destroy the effectiveness of their database. Foreign keys control data redundancy by using common attributes shared by the table. Crucial to exercising data redundancy control. Sometimes data redundancy is necessary. Index is orderly arrangement to logically access rows in a table. Index keys, index reference points to data location identified by the key. Unique index is index in which the index key can have only one pointer value row associated with it. Each index is associated with only one table. Unique index is index in which the index key can have only one pointer value associated with it. Each index is associated with only one. Each index is associated with only one table. And publish list of 12 rules to define relational database model products marketed as relational that did not meet minimum relational standards. And tables are basic building blocks. Summary tables are basic building blocks of relational database. Keys are central to use of relational database. Keys define functional dependencies. Superkey, candidate key, primary key, secondary key, foreign key. Each table row must have a primary key that uniquely identifies all attributes. And tables are linked by common attribute. The relational model support relational algebra functions. Select, project, join, intersect, union, difference, product, divide. Good design begins by identifying entity, attribute, and relationship. One-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many.